What's up everyone, Thrall's Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another collection update for you. I didn't intend to actually have another one out so soon, but I ended up going through a bunch of music. I got some sent to me too, which I wanted to include in this as well, so this one once again is pretty damn big. Got some stuff from Maggot Stomp here, some pickups of Night Shift merch, got some stuff from Redefining Darkness, and again, I had some stuff sent to me by some fans in here, and I can't wait to go over all of this stuff because yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in here, and this one's going to be a longer one for sure. So honestly, enough yammering, let's get into it. Cryptic Hatred, Nocturnal Sickness. This is the debut album from this Finnish death metal band. Came out this year on, let's see, Other Records, but distributed through Desert Wastelands, and I've been hearing a lot of buzz about this, and I can see why. This is flat out old school death metal, very much in the vein of like Cannibal Corpse, especially the Barnes era, surprisingly. Like, this actually sounds very akin to like Two and the Mutilated and the Bleeding, like lots of groove, lots of like really catchy riffs, but also kind of similar to more modern bands that actually, well, listen to Cannibal Corpse a lot, like Blood Red Throne. Not really the sound I expected from Finnish death metal. I mean, Finnish death metal kind of has its own sound where it's a little bit more on the Death Doom side. This is a little bit more Floridian. Like, there's definitely a lot of thrashy riffs on here. The guitars have almost an HM2 snarl to them, but it's not quite there. It just has this thrashy crunch to it that's just fucking awesome. This album is absolutely loaded with catchy riffs, lots of groove. The breakdown on Stench of the Dead is absolutely fucking skull crushing on here. This pretty much holds on to like every 90s death metal trope that I love, and somehow it doesn't feel like just retread the entire time. Like, these songs just fucking pop. I love this entire album. It's paced well, there's a lot of memorable hooks, and holy shit, it does not lay off the brutality for one fucking second here. Like, there's some cleaner harmonies every now and then when it comes down to the guitars, but for the most part, this is riff and chug and just brutality, and I love it for that. So if you haven't checked out this band, and I know a lot of you commented about this band and told me about it, I recommend checking it out. You all were fucking right. This is just absolutely nasty 90s style death metal, and it's awesome, so check it out. Jesus Wept, Psychedelic Degeneracy EP. This is their latest offering. This band is from, I believe, Detroit, Michigan. This features Nathan Barnes of Throne, who actually plays guitar and does vocals in Throne, but he's just on bass here. And this band, I actually have a compilation of two of their earlier EPs, which, you know, both of these come out on Redefining Darkness. And I don't remember them being the biggest, like, Carcass-loving band, but holy shit, this sounds like Carcass. Like Carcass with like an infusion of hardcore. Style-wise, this sort of sits somewhere between Symphonies of Sickness and Necroticism. In fact, the opening sample on Surgical Punishment Symmetry, it's pretty much like you just started listening to fucking Necroticism. Like, it has a sample of a pathologist report, someone that was probably mutilated in horrible fashion, is, you know, the Carcass shit. But honestly, I don't think the last one really sounded like this, and I don't know if this is like sort of a one-off thing where they just wanted to do like a Carcass tribute EP, but holy shit, they did it really well. And again, that infusion of like a little bit of hardcore in there in terms of like some of the grooves and breakdowns, it kind of makes it sound a little bit more fresh just in terms of, you know, well, there's a lot of Carcass worship bands out there, and I'm all fucking for it because I love that shit. But this actually stands out a bit. The production here is absolutely awesome. It's still gritty, but it's very crystal clear. Like, they really tightened up like everything on the sound, and it just, I don't know, it just sounds fucking great. And I will say there's even like a little bit of like the heartwork kind of vibe on it in terms of some of the harmonies. I mean, they do also the vocal trade-offs, so you got deep vocals and high screams as well, you know, very much like Walker and Steer. But I gotta say, the song Dispossession, the gallop that comes in there, even the drum work is a little bit of a nod to Ken Owen style of drumming too, which, you know, going over Carcass again, that dude had a very distinct style of drumming. They pretty much captured everything I like about Carcass on here, and in a specific era. Like, it's, again, Symphonies meets Necroticism. I'd say mostly Necroticism with like a dash of heartwork, and well, if you watch the ranking, those are my top 3 albums, so yeah, of course I fucking love this. Again, I'm not entirely sure if this is just a one-off thing where they just wanted to do a Carcass tribute EP, but holy shit, they fucking nailed it. And if they do choose to keep going this direction, I will buy more of their stuff. Like, I don't think they even have a full length yet. I think all they have are EPs and like demos, so they did a full length of something that sounded like this, yeah, I'm all for it. So yeah, if you love Carcass and you like Carcass worship bands, definitely check this out. Schizophrenia, Recollections of the Insane. This is the debut album from this Belgian death thrash act. Holy shit, a lot of people have been telling me about this one. I finally got around to ordering it off of Redefined Darkness's Bandcamp, and you guys were right. Holy shit, this is absolutely awesome. This is faster than hell, like super aggressive death thrash, and I fucking love it. It's that perfect combination of thrash aggression and fucking attitude and just death metal brutality. Pretty much sits somewhere between, like, I don't know, Vader, DSI, but also Demolition Hammer. Like, this is just such a fast, riffy album. It rarely slows down. That might hurt it a little bit, but not much, because honestly, I just kind of like this whole Bullet Train album. Like, it is just such a fast, ferocious listen. They do vary it up a little bit. I'd say Onwards to the Fire is like a little bit more melodic, and there are some more like technical elements on here. There were some spots in here that actually reminded me of Obscura just a little bit. Like, not as proggy, but in terms of the technical play and the insane speed, yeah, it was pretty damn close. Everything about this album is just very tight and precise. The drum work is just insane. It's fucking flying, but very clever fills all throughout. The riff work is just fucking heavier than hell. I love the triplet chugs on Inside the Walls of Madness. This album is just packed full of everything I like about death thrash. This is a super solid debut. I know they have an EP as well, and if I can find that one, I'm definitely going to pick that one up too, because if it's anything like this, I'm going to love it. So yeah, to whomever recommended this one, because I know a lot of you told me about this one and I was kind of late on it, thank you. This is absolutely awesome as well. Definitely check this out if you're a big death thrash fan. It's kind of just a perfect hybrid of both of them, so it doesn't lean too far to one side, and I kind of like that. Killer Death Thrash, definitely check this shit out. Immersed in Pain, Perforated Sanctuary. This is the debut album from this DC-based death metal act, and well, they're named after a Jungle Rot song, which they also cover on here, and yeah, this band kind of sounds a bit like Jungle Rot. Like, mostly the earlier stuff, it does get a little bit more brutal than Jungle Rot. I think the vocals are a little bit deeper, and the production here is very raw, especially the guitars. They're just fucking snarling on here, but it's mixed pretty damn well. Like, it's not just a pure muddy release. Very riff and groove laden. It definitely fits in with bands like Gate Creeper, Creeping Death, in terms of like that almost hardcore infused death metal. And I would say there's like a little bit of hardcore in here, but there's also a little bit of like old school brutal death, like kind of like Broken Hope a bit on here too. The big slam riff on Erect the Corpse Roll definitely kind of calls back to like Dying Fetus a little bit. This is very meat and potatoes, and yeah, it's a phrase we love to fucking say here, but this is definitely the definition of meat and potatoes death metal, but it's done well. Like, there's enough catchy riffs on there. It doesn't sound like basic, like they're just repeating the same stuff. It's really solid. This is a really good debut. I would say for a full length, it is pretty short. Like, it's under 25 minutes, I believe, but it is packed with solid fucking songs, and they covered Immersed in Pain really well, which, I mean, they should. That's their name. This came out on Maggot Stomp Records. It says 2022, but Metal Archive says 2021, so one of them are wrong. I'm gonna go this year, but yeah, solid album. Again, riffy, old school death metal, bit of hardcore bite, solid stuff. Check it out. Needlepusher, Abyssal Internment. This is the first demo from this Long Island-based brutal death metal act, and I think possibly the only thing they've released because their status is already unknown. This actually features current and former members of Theatos, which is also a Maggot Stomp band, and this is, well, it's a brutal death metal demo, and it is very raw and very muddy and just kind of a nuts listen. Like, I know Theatos is very technical and very strange, like kind of close to Defeated Sanity, maybe like a little bit of Cryptopsy, but this is definitely less polished and more just kind of brutal and in your face. The bass on here is exceptionally muddy, and this is a very short listen. There are 4 tracks on here, and it is under 11 minutes long. But it does throw in some interesting wrinkles. There's some really cool technical bits in the end of Neurological Vivisection. And I have to admit, Choirs of Agony, there's some like legit catchy parts in there. Like, it's not just brutal as hell. Like, they definitely have some interesting riffy hooks, kind of like Deeds of Flesh on here, or even some big breakdown grooves, kind of similar to Gorgasm. There really isn't a tremendous amount to talk about here, namely because this is under 11 minutes long, but It's pretty decent brutal death metal. It's very raw, very underproduced because it is a demo. But, I mean, hopefully they actually put out something, you know, new in the future that is definitely more polished. I'll definitely check it out. But yeah, this is a pretty raw, visceral, disgusting listen. And if any of that sounds appealing to you and you're a brutal death metal fan, check this out. Snet, at least I think that's how this is pronounced. Morkvani v. Okovech. Okay, all of this is in Czech. So, yeah, I'm gonna butcher a lot of shit here. But yeah, this is the debut album from this Czech death metal band. I have been looking for a copy of this for a while. I know a ton of people were talking about it. Again, sort of just catching up on stuff I missed. This came out last year on Blood Harvest Records, and holy shit, this is awesome. Now, I did try to look up at least what some of these words mean, because there's only one song on here with an English title, and that is track 4, Demon. The rest, not even gonna try. Like, this is way difficult. There's a lot of slashes and umlauts and yeah, no. But the name Snet, at least kind of sure that's how it's pronounced, actually translates to mildew or gangrene or rot. Kind of got a lot of different definitions, but they were all awful and just gross sounding, and that kind of fits with this album. This is some gross sounding death metal. This is very similar to Tomb Mold. It's very riffy. There's lots of just big fucking chuggy hooks on here. Lots of groove, lots of like thrashier sections on here. The production here is chunky as hell. The snare on here sounds absolutely fucking massive. But there's also a lot of nods to like early death metal too, like Autopsy and Death. There's some like really clever harmonies on here, some really solid leads too. I was really surprised at how catchy this was for as brutal as it is. Like, there's a lot of really just hooky riffs in here, especially on, we'll try it here, Folivor, whatever that means. That track, absolutely catchier than hell. And it even gets like kind of like dark and atmospheric and foreboding on the last track, Vesmyrna Saliva. Hey, there we go. I think that's, yeah, that's close, right? Maybe, not really. But yeah, I loved this entire album. This is just a nasty sounding death metal album. I love that sort of shit. Honestly, if I had listened to this last year, it could have creaked up into my top 40 because it's just well executed. Like, a lot of this, again, kind of 90s death metal tropes being repeated, but they're being repeated so damn well. And again, the hooks on here are just fucking ferocious. Super glad I found this one. I think I found this in Personal Records distro, which I've been searching for this for a while. Like, for a while there, it seemed like any copy of this was going for like 30 or 40 bucks. Unfortunately, found it on a distro and for its actual original price, and that was really nice. But yeah, absolutely awesome stuff. If you're a giant death metal fan, again, love like Tomb Mold and Cerebral Rot and stuff like that, or of course like Death and Autopsy, definitely check this out. This is fucking absolutely awesome. Dawn of Solace, Flames of Perdition. This is the newest album from this two-man doom metal act from Finland. This came out on Noble Demon Records this year. This features, I'm going to have to read this one, Tuomas Sakanen. He is from Before the Dawn and Wolfheart, both like really solid melodic death metal bands. And the singer that does the bulk of the vocals, all clean, Mikko Haikila? Yeah, sure. Finnish is hard. I mean, well, Czech was hard too, but Finnish is still really hard. Luckily, all these song titles are in English. But yeah, this is actually my first exposure to this band, and I've actually heard about them. I've just never listened to anything they've done, and this is really solid doom metal. Like, it's very dreary, of course, because it's doom metal, but very melodic. Like, the bulk of this is clean vocals. There are a couple of harsher vocals in the background, and that is Tuomas's. He plays everything on here, and then Mikko does all the clean vocals, which they're very, very well done. Like, they're very sorrowful and just dreary as hell, kind of similar to Catatonia, but there's like sort of a Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride heaviness to all this. But first and foremost, I would say it is very melody driven. Like, there are lots of great leads on here, lots of just hooky melodies, big choruses that are, you know, giant and depressing, but still big. There was stuff on here that reminded me a lot of Amorphous, especially like their current era here with Tommy on vocals. And I really enjoy the use of acoustic melodies on here. They do a really good job splicing them in, like in between heavier parts and letting the vocals carry over them, which, God, man, there are so many epic songs in here. The title track I absolutely love, and the song Skyline is flat out gorgeous. There's even a bit of synth work on here to sort of like layer out the sound. Like, this is really well done. The production here is absolutely fantastic. And as an added bonus, they have 2 live in studio tracks, Lead Wings and Dead Air, which are just acoustic guitar and the vocalist, and it sounds really good. Now, those songs I don't know because those were on previous albums, and I have not listened to any of the previous albums, but I think I will after listening to this. This is really good. It's just somber and dreary. If you're looking for, you know, the big sad, this band delivers the big sad. This is kind of what the whole thing seems to be about. Very gothic, very dreary. You don't put this on to feel good about anything. You just kind of float along with the mopiness. For Gothic Doom fans, all that should sound really appealing. For anyone else, I still recommend checking it out. It's very melodic and hook driven. I think you'll find some stuff in here you really like. Awesome album. Definitely want to check out more. Samael, Blood Ritual. So their second album came out in 1992. This is a 2020 reissue through Osmos and Century Media, and I think I said there would be more Samael in collection updates. I was talking about this because by the time I had actually covered Worship Him, I had already ordered this and I was just patiently waiting for it to get here. And holy shit, this album's awesome. Now, I listened to this one too many times. I just hadn't owned it and, well, corrected that mistake. And yeah, absolutely love their early stuff. Samael is definitely a lot of Celtic Frost worship, but they also bring in a lot of other elements like thrash metal and even death metal. Black metal can be brutal too, and early Samael is a damn good example of that. Now again, when I brought up Worship Him and the Metal Archives review saying it's too slow, I was like, well, this is possibly even more groove-laden, and I would say there's even more death metal riffs squeezed in there, and even some more like almost doom metal riffs on here. Macabre Operetta is a fiercely just doomy song. Like, it definitely still has, you know, the black metal sound to it, especially with the very ghastly vocals on here, but I don't know, like, again, this brings in a lot of stuff from different camps, but it's still uniformly black metal. It just has different influences. And I think being mainly influenced by Celtic Frost, like, you're gonna hear that all over. Especially with the second track, Beyond the Nothingness. That is pure Celtic Frost worship, and fuck yeah, dude, it's just awesome. I would say this is one of the heaviest black metal albums out there, just in terms of the heavier riffs. Like, again, the more death metal, thrash metal sort of vibe on the guitars, but it still has the very cold atmosphere on it. But I don't know, there is a different sound to this, and I love riffy black metal, and holy shit, this is absolutely awesome. I don't know if this is better than Worship Him, but oh man. The first 3 Samael albums, I mean, if you love black metal and like it riffy, those are the ones to definitely check out. I still like their more industrial stuff. I think that's just kind of its own separate thing, but it is good. But yeah, this early stuff, oh, great. So yeah, if you have never checked out early Samael and you didn't check out early Samael after I brought him up the last time, check out early Samael now because I hyped up 2 albums now. So yeah, check this one out. Check out all their earlier stuff. Check out their later stuff too. It's also good. It's just different. But I would definitely say this one is an essential listen just in terms of how different black metal can sound. Great album. Check it out. Tormentor Tyrant. This is their self-titled debut EP, came out this year on Everlasting Spew. This features members of Saluthis and Corpsest, and this is Finnish death metal, though it is like more thrashy Finnish death metal. Again, listening to a lot of Finnish death metal, but it's not like the typical Finnish death metal that I listen to, like the more death doomy stuff. This, again, kind of pulls from like a Floridian camp. Like, there's a lot of deicide worship on here. It's faster than hell. Again, those thrashier riffs. The vocals definitely have more of a thrashy roar to them, like kind of similar to, you know, Malevolent Creation as well. Again, not the typical Finnish death metal I listen to, but holy shit, this is really good. I like the production here. The guitars kind of have like a black metal sort of gaininess to them, but overall the production has just a live, jammed in the studio sort of vibe to it, and I really dig that. While there are some groovy pockets on here, this EP is fast as hell, like pretty much through all 5 tracks. It just rips through and pretty fun. It's a solid short offering. Like, there's really not much to it. I think it's under 20 minutes, but man, dude, it's a fun fucking listen. Again, since it's an EP, there's really not much to say. I like all 5 tracks on here. I think they're all really solid. Again, it's a short bullet train listen. It is just violent as hell, and I really dig it. So yeah, another solid offering from Everlasting Spew. This guy's been signing all sorts of cool bands here lately, and this is absolutely fucking killer as well. New Corpsest is coming out, I believe, this month, and I think I'll be on vacation for that one, but If the guys don't cover it, I'm going to cover that one because I love that band, and Salute This is awesome, and this band sounds nothing like either, which I think is really fucking cool. If you like your death metal very thrashy and kind of Floridian, like again, Malevolent Creation, Deicide, definitely check this out. Solid EP. Fetal, Blood Eagle. It's a fucking hell of a name. Indoctrinate. This is the debut album from this international brutal death metal act. Came out on Lissimo Records, and this is yet another one that features Svenko from Aborted. He was in Coffin Feeder, I mean, obviously Aborted, and the dude just seems to be everywhere, and his vocals are so fucking awesomely distinct. It's, you know, just cool hearing him with different projects, even though inevitably some of them just end up sounding like Aborted, just with like some slightly different nuances. This definitely sounds like Aborted, but it sounds like earlier Aborted. This is a little bit closer to Gormageddon era Aborted. Like, it's way more raw. It doesn't sound as big in terms of production as, you know, more recent Aborted albums are. There's not a ton of samples scattered in here. There is just flat out brutality, riffs, groove, like it's very fucking tight. It is very fucking brutal. The chugging riffs on Hate Fucked Face, which, yeah, there's some fun song titles on here, absolutely driving. Like, the syncopation on that is just like decapitated, like it's just pummeling as hell. The production here is very tight, maybe a little too compressed in spots, but overall I like it. The guitars are very forward in the mix, and I think this is definitely one of those that is just done for the fun of it. Like, dude, some of these song titles, Cinder Block Suicide, Abortion Dumpster Overload, that's a fucking groovy, awesome fucking song. Only Meth is Real. There's a fun sample at the beginning of that, and that is Pure America. And yeah, dude, this is just fucking hilarious in terms of how over the top it is, but I love the songs. The songs, they were serious as a heart attack about crafting them because they're all hooky. They're all awesome. I would even say some of the stuff rivals Aborted. It's that fucking good. And kind of like Coffin Feeder, like, there's a lot more groove in this. This is not just a wall of blast beats. There's definitely blast beats on here, but I don't think they blast to the degree of Aborted. So there is a little bit of separation from Aborted in terms of this one's sound, but again, it inevitably ends up sounding like Aborted if you have Sven on vocals. This is the kind of brutal death metal I really dig. The vocals aren't just all burps, there's lots of groove, there's really awesome riffs. It's not just repeated slam riffs and just the same blast beats. Production solid. Strongly recommend this one. And again, this is definitely done for the sake of just over the top fucking fun. So yeah, if you love brutal death metal and you love Aborted, definitely check this out. Agathodaimon The Seven. This is the 7th album from this German black metal act, came out on Napalm Records, and this is a band that I heard about like years ago, but I never followed up on. There was a song that was on a sampler from, God, I think it was Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles, from the album Serpent's Embrace. Actually, I think it was the title track, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, but I never followed up on it. So years later, I see this in the store, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna check this out. I heard a couple of singles, and this is gothic black metal, I guess you could say. It's kind of similar to like Dimmaborger in terms of like their like mid-period stuff, like the early 2000s. Like, there's not a tremendous amount of synths or like orchestration or anything like that, but there is enough to really kind of layer out the sound, and it's definitely very aggressive. There's a lot of clean vocals on here, which most of the time they're really good, but sometimes I think they get like a little too epic and they kind of lose the whole like gothic evil feel. Like, it kind of just turns into more melancholy and such, which, you know, it's good to have some variety, but I just feel like they're too, I don't know, sing-songy maybe. I don't know. Something about some of the clean vocals kind of put me off. I think it was the song Ghosts of Greed that had this really like big heavy breakdown, but they chose to sing over it, and then the next time they bring back the breakdown, they actually growl over it, and I was like, man, you probably should have growled over both, because honestly, I think that kind of fit the overall vibe on here. And I don't think the vibe on here is necessarily like evil. It's more like dark and kind of like gothic. Both parts to In My Dreams, both the prelude and part 2, The Bitterness, definitely kind of have like a lot of gothic melodies to it, and there's even some like kind of toolish bass lines on there that I thought were kind of interesting. But yeah, this was pretty decent. I kind of just picked this one up on a whim just because I remembered this band and I had actually listened to a couple tracks and I was like, you know, why not? Let's give it a chance. And honestly, pretty decent album. I'm not the biggest fan of everything on here, but most of it was pretty solid. So if you like your black metal a little bit more on the gothic side, a little bit more like melancholy versus like flat out evil sounding, and a little bit more like well produced, I'd say check this one out. This was a pretty fun listen. Kvaen, The Great Below. I probably fucked up the band's name, but this is the second album from this one-man black metal / pagan metal act. I actually have their first album, The Funeral Pyre. It absolutely whoops ass, and this one might be even better. This came out on Black Lion Records, and this, alright, it's black metal and pagan metal, but honestly, there's a fuck ton of thrash metal on here. Most of this album is fucking flying. The riffs are so goddamn catchy. The lead work is absolutely scorching, which he actually had some help in terms of the lead work. He actually had the lead guitarist from Necrophobic on here, as well as the lead guitarist from Merciful Fate and King Diamond on here. Mike Weed, I believe is what he goes by. Every lead on here, absolutely scorching, very triumphant, very melodic, but thrashy and angry. I love this fucking album. Like, I love their last one too, like pretty much for the same reasons, but I feel like they do this one a bit better. And there's a little bit more like different material. The song In Silence on here is a little bit more focused on the black metal side, a little bit more cold and grim, but again, I don't know, everything about this just feels like triumphant, like it just whooped whatever's ass and it is fucking gloating, and it should because it has the riffs to do so. The production on here is fucking giant size, but it doesn't come off as like overproduced at all. There's a lot of stuff in here that kind of reminds me of like the early days of Children of Bodom, just in terms of like how much fun they have with the lead play. And again, that black and thrash sort of energy on here, a lot of stuff that kind of reminded me of Skeleton Witch. It's thrashy enough to the point where I think their logo should be just slightly pointier, but the logo's still awesome, and the whole album is awesome. I love every single track on here. Could be year-end material, I don't know, we're still early in that, but man, this is so goddamn good. And generally, I'm not the biggest fan of like pagan metal per se, like the more like Corporate Kleiny, Fintroll sort of stuff. This is not that, it's more pagan in themes. And even when you get like a more pagan folky melody, they thrash it up, and that makes it a little bit more approachable for me because, you know, folky melodies are cool here and there, but I don't like that being the main thing. This is just riff forward fucking awesomeness. Strongly recommend this. Go get their first one too. Their first one's absolutely amazing as well, but yeah, this flat out whoops ass. Check it out. The Perilous Mind, The Cycle of Darkness. This is the debut album from this California-based thrash metal, maybe a little bit of death metal, like it's kind of death thrash, but mostly thrash metal. Anyway, this was actually sent to me by one of our subscribers, Rustifer Thrash. His brother is actually in this band, and he hit me up on Messenger and said, hey, would you like a copy of my brother's band? He's doing really well, and play me a sample of it. I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty solid. And here it is, and this is pretty solid. Again, it kind of wavers between thrash and death thrash. I would say it's mostly thrash, and there's definitely a lot of like Bay Area influence on here, but this definitely has some very death metal moments, or like progressive death metal moments. The instrumental on here, Lunar Depression, sounds like later era death, maybe like a little bit of Atheist in there, but a lot of this is very thrashy. I would say for me, this album really hit it straight on the 1-2 punch that is The Next Lost Philosophy and Perilous Mind, track 4 and 5. Holy shit, those are good. Now, I do have some issues with the production, but this is an independent release, and yeah, there's just some roughness. Like, I think the lead tone overall on this album is really, really loud, kind of squawky. And for me, it made the leads a little bit less enjoyable just because they were so far out in front of the mix. It wasn't as though the leads were bad. Actually, the leads are really solid. It's just how they were recorded. And the drums kind of sound odd. Like, they sound really compressed, and occasionally they're mixed differently. The song The Next Lost Philosophy, when it comes down to the lead section, all of a sudden the drums sound different, like there's a different sounding snare on it. But I mean, minor production, you know, gripes aside, this is pretty damn solid. So thank you, Rustifer, for actually sending this to me. I've jammed this album a few times, and this is a pretty solid debut. Again, mostly just production tweaks, and I think maybe the vocals just need like a little bit more variety, like they kind of hang on one growl a little bit too much. But overall, the foundation is there for like future killer albums, and I would definitely check out more by this. So yeah, if you like, well, I would say mostly thrash metal, but there's like a little bit of death metal on there, I would say definitely check this out. Solid debut. Ruins, Cauldron. This is the second album from this Australian-based black metal act. Features Joe Haley on drums from Cryptic, and I believe Dave Haley actually produced this one too, so both those guys involved. Now, I got this one in my most recent Metalhead box, and I was actually really excited to go over because we had a talk with Kane from the Amenta, and he actually brought up this band as a killer Australian metal band, which Australia has a fuck ton. And I actually own 2 albums by it, and he actually brought up one of the albums that I had. I don't have this one, and it was cool to get a chance to bring this band up again because this is a sick black metal band. I would say they kind of border more on black and death metal, at least in terms of style. Like, they're considered black metal, at least in terms of the archives. I always hear a little bit of death metal in here, like not quite just, you know, straight up black metal, like maybe like Belphegor. Like, it has still all the, you know, cold atmosphere, very evil sounding, but there's some sick fucking death metal riffs on here. The title track in here sounds like Blackened Morbid Angel, but again, you have all the black metal atmosphere in there, especially with the vocals. The vocals in here, this dude likes to make all sorts of noises. Like, he's got a great solid like uniform delivery he has on here for the most part, but there's lots of groans and moans with, you know, tons of reverb on there, and it just kind of adds the creepier, more distant sections on here. These guys definitely love the atmosphere thing. Like, they want to make this sound as creepy as possible in sections, but then just dazzle you with fucking giant riffs and really solid lead work. Actually, there's a ton of dynamics on here. This isn't just, you know, blast beats and tremolo riffing nonstop. Like, there's lots of cool epic breakdowns on here. Dreary melodies all over the place, especially the song Genesis. There's this really like kind of nasty, bendy sort of, I don't know, like melody on there. Like, I don't know, it's just a creepy sounding but very catchy melody. And these guys splice in some interesting samples, and I swear there's one on here I just could not fucking place. It's some dude yelling at someone about not believing in God and trying to start a fight or something like that, but I know I've seen the movie that's from, and I tried looking it up just on that quote alone, and I was like, this is pointless, I'm never gonna fucking find this shit. But if you know the sample I'm talking about, you actually own this album, and you know what movie it's from, put that in the comments, because it was driving me nuts. But yeah, I really dig this album. I think it gets a little long-winded with some of the samples, like some of them go on a little too long, but for the most part, solid album. And if you like black metal that might actually be more black and death metal, definitely check this out and check out all their stuff. The other 2 that I have are really solid albums. This one is also awesome. I think it's a little bit more black metal than the other ones, but again, I think they're a little bit more black and death metal, but either way, it's awesome stuff and you should check it out. Glacial Tomb Cognitive Erosion EP. This is the debut EP from this Denver-based, let's see, black metal, death metal, sludge metal, sort of hybrid. It's really all of those things, and dear God, it's fucking heavy. Now, this was actually sent to me by their drummer, Michael Salazar. He actually got a hold of me on our Gmail and offered this just to send it to me. I was like, holy shit, yeah. I guess he saw the video forever ago where I brought up their full length, which is absolutely amazing, and maybe a little bit more of a straightforward death metal release than this one. But yeah, he sent me this, and thank you very much. And Jesus Christ, this is just gnarly. It really blends together all those styles really well. Like, you have a very cold, blackened atmosphere in some sections, but the guitars are bottom heavy and sludgy. The riffs kind of go all over the place. Like, you have giant death metal breakdowns and big death metal chugs, but you also have like sludge metal drones on here. But you also have like punky D-beat sections, especially in the last 2 tracks, Entropic Decay and Burial Shroud. Man, this is just a vicious listen. The production here is caustic, especially when it comes down to the guitars. The guitars, they crackle and hiss a little bit, and they have this bottom heavy distorted tone, and the full weight of that tone comes out on breakdowns, especially at the end of Burial Shroud. Holy shit, that doom-laden breakdown is massive, ridiculously heavy. I think I like the full length a little bit more, namely because there's a lot more of it, and it feels a little bit more centered on death metal. But I really like the blend of different stuff in here. Like, this is kind of its own thing. Like, this almost sounds like 2 different bands, but they're both awesome. And I kind of wish that this was longer. Actually, that was a big complaint. I was like, dude, I want to hear more of this. Like, I could sit through at least 40 minutes of this, but this was closer to 20. So kind of a big tease, but absolutely awesome. I believe they are working on a follow-up to their full length, which I am super excited about because, again, I love their full length, and I'm kind of curious to hear what the next one's going to sound like, because both the EP and the full length sound very different from one another, and Jesus, they're both just ridiculously heavy. If you love ridiculously heavy music that is sludgy, blackened, and loaded with death metal riffs, check this out. It is a monstrous listen, and I fucking love it. And thank you once again, Michael, man. Awesome of you to send me this. Dead Soul Alliance, Behind the Scenes. Now we're going to get into the Bitter Loss package here, and this is kind of why this one's a little bit longer, is because I wanted to get these in here. This is the debut album from this Canadian two-man death metal act, and this is awesome. Like, this is somehow, like, in terms of the sound, it feels like the bridge between Tampa and, like, European death metal. A lot of this reminds me of Nightmares Made Flesh era Bloodbath, especially the vocals. The vocals sound kind of similar to Peter Tagrin's lower vocals, but you have all the thrashiness of bands like Deicide and I would say Malevolent Creation, but mix that in with like Bloodbath and early Hypocrisy. This is just a nasty flying album in terms of speed and hyper aggressive. While this is brutal as hell, I'd have to say there's a lot of really cool melodies. Ancient Rulers of Greed has some very, well, Hypocrisy-like hooks, like, you know, the big giant harmonies that you'd hear in Hypocrisy albums. And Screams from the Asylum, that sounds like a fucking Bloodbath song, like flat out. Now, I really dug this, but there was something that was kind of an issue with the production. I think it might have something to do with the bass tone, but it sounds like there's this weird hum in the background, like a machine-like hum in the background of this entire album. It might be the bass that's generating that, but it's not like off-putting to the point where I wanted to turn it off because the music was so goddamn good. But it was there, and it was just sort of, I don't know, I just detected it on every track. But yeah, solid one. Thank you, Bitter Loss. This one is a fucking awesome release, and if you like Floridian death metal and you like Bloodbath and you just like death metal, if you like death metal, I'm reasonably sure you will really dig this. Definitely check it out. This is a solid debut, and I definitely want to hear more from this band. Necrony, Pathological Performances. This is the lone full length from this band, came out in 1993, and I'm going to keep this one short because this is definitely retro review material, as John and I said in the video, because I didn't realize it until I looked it up. The two people that are in here went on to do Nauseam. In fact, this band was the main band, and then Nauseam was a side project at the time, and then the side project turned into the main thing, and we want to do like a thing on Nauseam too, like go over all four of their albums, but this one deserves its own retro review, and I was 100% right. It is Carcass Worship, very Symphonies of Sickness era Carcass, a little bit of necroticism in there, but holy shit, I really dug this, and I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to go too much into it because then you wouldn't have any reason to watch our retro review. But yeah, Bitter Loss, thank you very much. I'm going to pretty much leave it at that. I'm going to leave a link to the album down there, of course, because all the music will be linked down below, but I'm not going to go into it anymore because I want to have a lot of fun talking about how awesome this is. So yeah, check it out. All right, now we have the pair from Parasitic Equilibrium. We have Despise Human, and we have Dark Meditation, both of which came out in 2021. And there's actually another one that came out in 2021. These guys put out 3 full lengths in 1 year, so fuck yeah, the work ethic, guys. So this is a two-man blackened death metal act from Australia, and this is fucking gnarly as hell. I would say, I don't know, it's kind of an interesting balance. Like, you definitely get a lot of black metal atmosphere in here, but most of this is rooted in death metal, and I would say Incantation and Profanatica really feel like that's like the big influence on here. Most of these songs are very like doomy, dissonant, and ugly. The vocals are reverb drenched and gurgled in kind of the background. There's occasionally like death grind moments on here, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like all of a sudden you'll get a short kind of punky, you know, D beat track or like a flat out blast beat fit. But for the most part, it's death metal, and these two albums are a bit different. Now this one was a little bit confusing looking it up because when I put the CD in, there are 19 tracks on here. But when I looked it up, there are only 8 listed. And I couldn't find this version in terms of like Discogs, in terms of like what else is on here. I think what they did was throw on a whole bunch of stuff from splits and demos and EPs, but they didn't list them on here because I looked through and was like, man, I cannot find these extra songs. So I don't know what those extra songs are, but I know that they're good, and I just got to figure out which one's which, because it isn't as though I can look in the lyric book or look up the lyrics and figure out what dude's fucking growling, but I know it's probably something horrible. But yeah, in terms of like finding out which track it is, gonna be way too hard. But this one is definitely, I would say, the murkier of the two, and Jesus, it just feels evil as hell. It's raw, muddy, but surprisingly, it's really well constructed. Like, it isn't just trying to be raw without, like, you know, cool dynamics. The song Loop Skull on here, absolutely awesome. Some really wild transitions on here. And both of these have a lot of interesting samples to really cement the dark, disturbing, unsettling atmosphere that is all over here. Now, this one I would say is produced quite a bit better, like it's way more clear. But this one kind of goes more for the riffs. In fact, the opening song in here, Compassion Fatigue, is more like straightforward, like groovy death metal. Like, it kind of has an obituary vibe. And I would even say like less blackened death metal in here. Like, this is more of a straight up death metal release, but lots of dynamics in this one too. Like, there's longer songs that actually have like tons of different movements, shifting from death doom to like more blackened death metal to straight up like 90s Floridian death metal. Really solid stuff. I really did not know what to make of this band, just in terms of like looking them up, because there really isn't much on them. So going in this one pretty much blind was pretty awesome, because both these albums are fucking killer. And I definitely want to check out that third full length at some point. Again, 3 full lengths in the same year. Bravo, guys. Oh, and there was one track on here that I thought was really different. Then All Your Pain Will End. It opens up with mostly pianos and like just very soft melodies, except with like gurgled growls in the background. So honestly, the first thing I thought of was Radiohead's Pyramid song. And yeah, it's like that, except with the demon gurgling in your ear. Very strange. But yeah, solid blackened death metal, I don't know, death doom too. It's kind of all over the place, but in a good way. Definitely check these out. Awesome albums. I look forward to checking out that third one just to see what that one sounds like. I can't imagine it's that much different than these, which is not a problem for me because these were both really good. So yeah, check them out. Sufferance for the Madness Beyond. This is the debut demo from this Australian death metal act, and these guys love 90s death metal. It's pretty damn apparent right away, like very Floridian death metal. The mix is not great on here, like it's kind of muddy, like you can definitely hear it in the guitars, and the vocals sound a bit muffled, but this is a demo and a first offering, so kind of just let that slide. You're kind of just getting out there. And in terms of like, you know, the sound overall, very meat and potatoes death metal. Like, there's lots of groove, there's big thrashy blast beat sections. Definitely hear a lot of influence in terms of like Cannibal Corpse, Deicide, you know, stuff like that. Pretty solid stuff. There's not really much to go on about because there's only 4 tracks on here, and they all kind of have like a similar vibe to them, except for the last track, Strike of Terror, which is very different. In fact, it sounds like there's a drum machine on it. I'm not entirely sure, but just listening to the drums, it sounds like a drum machine, and the production's like a little bit different. Like, the bass is not as prominent in it, the guitar sound maybe like a little bit cleaner. I don't know if that one was kind of thrown on there and like mixed completely differently, or that one was like really not complete yet, so they threw the drum machine track on there. It might not be a drum machine, but it sounds like a drum machine. But yeah, pretty solid demo. Again, not much to really go on about since it is a very short offering, but they have a solid sound. And in terms of like a first demo, like, would you check out more by them? Yeah, this is definitely right in my wheelhouse. Again, I love 90s death metal, and these guys definitely have that sound. So yeah, if you love 90s death metal, I'd say check this one out. And finally, we have The Plague, Within Death. This is the debut full length from this Australian death metal act, and holy fucking nasty HM2 tone. This is fucking heavy. As it has been established many times on this channel, I am a filthy fucking slut for HM2 tone, and these guys offer up a nasty one that is particularly just crunchy as hell. Like, it just sounds gnarly, like it sizzles. It's almost too heavy, but I'm not a fucking pussy, so I made it all the way through this, but it was only like 33 minutes. This is very much in the vein of bands like Gatecreeper, Of course, tons of Entombed and Dismember worship, because if you're doing HM2 and you're not worshiping this band, you're doing it wrong. But I would definitely say there's like a lot of that hardcore influence in there too. Like, it has a bit of stuff that sounds like, Terminal Nation, Creeping Death. The vocals especially, the vocals sound very hardcore oriented. Like, it's more of like a real throaty, dry sort of bark. And occasionally you get like more higher screams in there, but they sound very just rough. Like there's chunks of like lung and throat coming up with them. But also that kind of adds to the whole visceral feel of this. This actually reminds me a lot of Descent, or at least in terms of like the production, the feel. Like there's really no grindcore aspects on here. Like occasionally you get some blast beats, but most of this is very groove laden, and the breakdowns hit fucking harder than hell. And it also doesn't have the blackened elements when it comes down to the groovy, heavy sections, very similar to that Descent band that I absolutely love their fucking debut as well. This album delivers on flat out fucking disgusting levels of heaviness. This is like cinder block being dropped in your skull level heaviness, which this is considerably safer than actually having a cinder block dropped in your skull, so I recommend this over that. They have one other EP. I definitely want to check it out because, again, this fucking rules. So yeah, once again, thank you very much to Bitter Lost Records for sending this cool ass care package with some sick fucking bands. And of course, check this out. All right, that does it for number 101. Now this will probably be my last collection update until I get back from vacation, because I'm probably going to come back with a shitload of music because their record stores down there are fucking sick. But yeah, obviously that's going to take a little while because, I have to listen to all that stuff. Plus, I'm also listening to a bunch of Exodus here lately, so we can get that ranking out hopefully before we leave for MDF, which that's going to be a fuck ton of fun. And man, I'm just excited to be getting out of the house, out of Toledo, or out of Ohio at least, or out of the tri-state area, because I've been to Detroit for shows. That counts as getting out of the state. But I mean, honestly, it's all the same as the fucking Midwest. But yeah, plenty of stuff coming down the pipe. And of course, as always, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We're also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there'll be a link down below, as well as a link to thrallsmetal.com, where you can get yourself one of our kick-ass shirts if you'd like. As always, thank you all so much for watching, subscribing, following, commenting, all that shit. We love you guys. We love doing the whole metal community thing. While I'm gone on vacation, I'll probably be popping on for some live streams here and there just to bullshit with you, because I like bullshit with you guys. That's pretty much the only reason I need, right? And a fair warning, I could be drunk in those streams, so I don't know, shit might get weird. I mean, it gets weird in our streams anyway in terms of all the weird shit we talk about, but it could get really weird because drunk me does not give many fucks, and I already don't give a lot of fucks now. So yeah, drunk me could be fun or disastrous. Could go either way. Anyway, thank you all once again for watching, and we will catch you later.